Hello students, I am Gunjan Malik Manocha, Assistant Professor in Institute of Hotel and Tourism Management, Maharishi Dayanand University, Rohtak. Welcome to EPG Pathshala. We are studying the paper Managing Culture and Diversity, and today we will study the module Organizational Culture and Human Resource Management Practices. The learning outcomes would be that by the end of this module, students will be able to understand the concept and relevance of international human resource management and cultural training, and the students will get familiar with the training compensation dealing with the culture shock. First, let's have an introduction of organizational culture and HRM practices. Human resource management has a tough task of retaining people. With MNCs going global, that is either shifting the place of manufacture to the place where the cost of manufacturing is low cost and cost of maintaining the staff is also lower. Looking out for R&D, it is about curbing cost while retaining the talent or deploying the best talent locally or internationally. An organization is a society which has a mission, and each society has its own mainstay traditions and customs, moral fiber and identity. Such qualities are so basic that they are likely to be dominant than the business development, strategic marketing or financial, team conduct and business domination. Culture defines appropriate behavior, motivates individuals, and it asserts solutions where there is ambiguity. It manages a company performance, internal relations and values. Organizational culture controls the success of mergers, acquisitions, diversifications, new expertise, convention and infrastructure and socialization. Dimensions of IHRM. Morgan has presented IHRM on 3 dimensions: the broad human resource activities of procurement, allocation and utilization. The national or the country categories involved in IHRM activities are the host country where a subsidiary may be located, the home country where the firm is headquartered, and the other countries that may be the source of labor, finance and other inputs. Now this is the dimensions model of IHRM, which says there are 3 host country nationals, HCNs, PCNs, the parent country nationals, and the third is third country nationals. These are the types of employees, and the human resource activities they perform is: first they procure, the parent country nationals they allocate, and the third country nationals they utilize. Expatriation and repatriation. The 3 national or the country categories involved in international HRM activities are HCNs, PCNs and TCNs. Expatriates. The staff are transferred from local borders to diverse positions in the global organization's overseas business. They are called expatriates. In short, expatriate is a person working and for the short-term living in overseas. Impatriate, the relocation of the employees into the headquarters or the operations, that is the home country nationals. They become impatriates when they are relocated back as expatriates. Repatriation. The process of reintegration of expatriated into headquarter organization and career ladder as well as into social environment. Now there are problems, MNC's problems and personal problems. The MNC's problems are less appreciation, loss of social life, inappropriate career transfer, hurdles in career, the ability to influence, hostility from the co-workers, and it can also be technological change and process change. Now if we talk about the personal problems, group adjustment, importance in position, the monetary inconvenience. Global staffing approach. An approach in which the staff is recruited from within or outside the country, regardless of the nationality. The person should be culturally viable and must easily adapt to the cultures. Knowledge of the local language of the foreign land is an added advantage. compensation. Now, the global managers deal with two areas of focus. They must manage intricate and unstable details while simultaneously emerging successfully by developing reward policies and reimbursement packages. For global organizations to productively administer compensation and reimbursement, it must be well aware of the taxation laws, the customs, the background and the employment styles of the country. They must have knowledge with the legal tender fluctuations, the effect of price rises on payment, an understanding of why and when exceptional grant must be supplied and which grants are necessary in which countries, all within the framework of changing political, economic and social conditions. And due to this reason, many MNCs tie up with consulting firms. Expatriate compensation is seen more as a component of a more balanced system of the world pay. Expatriate compensation must draw and maintain staff in the areas where the MNC has the maximum requirement and prospects. The compensation must be reasonable and identify with the aspects like incentives for the overseas facility, tax equalizations and payment for the realistic expenditure. The compensation should help the movement of global employees in a cost-efficient manner for the organization. It must give thought to justice and simplicity of direction. The purpose of expatriate reimbursement is that the employee will anticipate in the proposal of monetary security like payback, social security and livelihood costs overseas. The employee will expect an overseas project to offer prospects for financial progression. So, to make sure that the expatriates are not at a disadvantage with their foreign posting, the balance sheet approach is used to level the standard of living between the host country and the home country. Now, the global organizations take up the supplementary costs that the expat would incur for taxes, housing, goods and services. The tax gap is intricate and costly for the country and multinationals. And then the multinationals apply a procedure of tax equalization. The company reimburses any taxes due that the expatriate is given for the project. The expatriate gets to pay what he or she should pay at home. The time and the means of disbursement of funds decide what the overseas levies were incurred. The global worker expect concerns such as housing, education of children and amusement activities dealt within the course of action. Now, compensating host country nationals. The purpose of compensation is to attract, is to safeguard and also to encourage employees. According to McNally in 1992, global organizations should compensate well for the skilled manpower to retain. Cultures vary along with country HR policies as organizations are growing like never before. So it is the HR which is feeling the challenges as it has to learn the different political systems, the different regulation and traditions of the different countries. They create both problems as well as opportunities. Now, Robbins in 1997 said that opportunities are the driving force for the global organization to increase their intercontinental production. International reimbursement includes take-home pay, remuneration, inducement such as monetary benefits and old age retirement assistance. Global managers deal with two areas of focus. First, they must handle the intricate and the confused local information, while second, at the same time, maintaining a combined and pre-mediated reimbursement policies, practices and principles. For international organizations to handle payment and remuneration, it necessitates the facts and figures of service and monies levied by the law, the traditions, the surroundings and employment details of those countries, awareness of the legal tender fluctuations and the effect of price rises on payment, a thorough knowledge of the allowances to be distributed, the entire framework of changing political, trade and industry and as well as societal surroundings. Now, this stage is when the global organizations need to take the assistance of a consultant. Expatriate compensation is seen more as a component of a more balanced system of the world pay, which should be reliable by and large on the approach, the organization and the trade and commerce of the global organization. A good compensation package should help to retain internationals in a cost-effective manner for the firm. The policy must give due consideration to fair pay and the simplicity of management. The purpose of global reimbursement is that the employee expects monetary security in the terms of payback, in the terms of social security, and also less expenditure in the global location. The employee will expect issues like housing, education of children, and recreation to be addressed in the policy. Now the diagram shows when it comes to compensating the expatriates, you need to take care of 4 things. First is the remuneration, plus the taxes, plus the allowances, and also the benefits. So all of these comprise of the expatriate compensation. Now what is remuneration? People expect to earn money than in the home country due to fluctuations of the currency in the market. If we talk about taxes, people do not like to be taxed heavily and they expect the taxes to do not take away the saving. So we need to take care of the taxes. Allowances. Employees working abroad expect aid, financial or otherwise, in the form of education of their kids, relocation allowance, to and fro charges to go home and back, and many others. And if we talk about the benefits, the expatriates also expect health insurance and the stock options. Host country nationals. Now reimbursement should be consistent with the situations, also with the local market, the pay scales of the local personnel, the benefits they are getting, and also the cost of living, and many other factors. Global organizations cannot pay equal amount to their employees for a foreign assignment. It differs from country to country, and the base pay, though may remain same, the additional benefits like education, fees, to and fro charges of going home, the cost of living, all these factors are taken into consideration. Now the cost of labor, it is both like direct and the indirect compensation. The cost of labor in globe across is one of the reasons why there is business expansion. Good packages can lure the best talent to come forward for the foreign posting. Gomez and Mejia in 1998 said that when reimbursement packages are compared with the packages of the locals, it casts a doubt of suspicion that they being treated unfairly. MNCs balance the business objectives with the compensation programs such as the base salary, the taxes, the allowances, and the cost of living allowances, housing, and reimbursable expenses. This was stated by Solomon in 1995. Global compensation packages. If we talk about the package of an expatriate, it has been divided into 4 components. The first is base salary and incentive pay. It includes the basic salary, the bonus, and the stock options. Then the kind of allowances we offer to the expatriate compensation includes cost of living, tax equalization, international market, relocation, hardship and danger, exchange rate protection. Then the kind of benefits we are supposed to offer to the expatriate compensation: housing, educational, medical, and insurance allowance. Then the retirement benefits. The expatriates also expect gratuity, pension, and certain social security measures. Cultural shock. Now what is cultural shock? Cultural shock refers to the unpleasant experience that can be had when coming into contact with some other culture. It is a state of disorientation, or we can say it is a state of anxiety about not knowing how to behave in an unfamiliar culture. The new environment requires many adjustments in a shorter period, which is challenging the people to such an extent that their experiences that cause psychological disorientation. This causes the employees to leave early, or they will be compensated more for the job to retain the persons. The cause a cultural shock is practiced is because the people are not able to speak in strange location and they have to learn methods to hide off their difficulties. Stages of cultural shock. Culture shock progresses through 4 stages as described in a diagram by Oberg. That is honeymoon, irritation and hostility, adjustment and acceptance. Let's have a detailed explanation of all the stages. The first is the honeymoon stage, when positive attitudes and expectations, excitement and a tourist type of a feeling prevails. Irritation and hostility. The crisis stage, when the cultural differences result in problems at the work or even at the home or in the daily living. Many expatriates and the family members, they feel homesick and they feel disoriented. And gradual adjustment, it is a period of recovery in which the patient gradually is able to understand and predict the patterns of behavior, use the language, and the family starts to accept their new life. And the next stage is biculturalism, the stage in which family members grow to accept and appreciate the local people and practices, and they are able to function effectively in 2 cultures. Levels of culture shock. According to Marx, international managers experience culture shock psychologically at 3 levels. She uses what she calls the culture shock triangle, which is displayed in the diagram in the slide, to describe these 3 levels. The 3 levels are thinking, emotions and social skills and identity. Now, thinking includes from stereotyping to culturally effective thinking, emotions from euphoria to depression or to even satisfaction or contentment, social skills and identity from national to transnational social skills or to an international identity. Subculture shock. Though less extreme to the culture shock, this occurs when a manager is transferred from another part of the country where there are cultural differences, essentially from what he or she perceives to be a majority culture to a minority culture. This shock is like a feeling like an immigrant in one's own country or being unprepared for such differences. Now, to know how culture change can improve an employee's performance, he should be aware of what constitutes a culture. All this launches the foundation for initiating a new framework for the new culture. Along with the change, a technique for analysis for initiating cultural change, the change of the culture of an organization, there is little hope of continuing improvement in organizational performance. The main reason for the breakdown of organizational effectiveness is that the implements and the modus operandi may be the same as the organization remains the same. When the basic values, orientations and definitions and the goals are constant, so is the organization. Change in the organizations can take place only when the mutual trust is not broken down and when the employees fails to change pessimism, disappointment and failure of mechanism and decline in the self-esteem among organization members. As Cameron and his colleagues found in their research that the organization change strategy is gamble which can be paid off unless tried. Now, if we talk about the training of expatriates, expatriates are trainers through transfer of knowledge. They ensure that systems and processes are adopted and they gain management capabilities. Training for international teams. First, we start with recruitment, selection, then we train them, then we develop them, then we give them international assignments. Then during the training, we also give them pre-departure training. When they are supposed to go for their international assignments, before going, we give them pre-departure training and it forms an international team. Expatriates require pre-departure training to deal with 2 things. One is the cultural adjustment because they are going to face a new culture, and the foreign language. They are going to face a new language in the other country. And support, they require support of the company in the form of preliminary visits, the relocation assistance and training for the trainers. Intercultural training. The objective of intercultural training is to help people cope with the unexpected events that can be there in a new culture. It is the most common form of pre-departure training. Cultural awareness programs includes that the expatriates learn and they adapt to and not feel isolated from the host countries by appropriate behaviors and the coping patterns, and also understanding the host country's value and the belief system. Now, the pre-departure program should be designed in such a way that the expatriate is aware of the cultural awareness, the language skills, and also the appropriate behaviors and the coping strategies. Tung and Hill in 1982 and 2005 stated that one of the main reasons for expatriate failure is the inability of the spouses to adjust in. In addition to providing training, it is a part of the commitment of the organization to provide training to the spouse of expatriates. Now, studies have shown that the success or failure of the stay of the expatriates in the foreign lands is directly related to how well the spouse adjusts with the place of stay. And this depends on the organization, on well it can train the spouse culturally wise and language wise. Now, this diagram displays the cross-cultural training approach. On the horizontal axis, we have length of stay, which ranges from 1 month or less to 1 to 3 years. And then on the vertical axis, we have two things. One is length of training, which starts with less than a week to 1 to 2 months plus, and the level of rigor, which is from low, moderate, and high. The first is when we have a training where the level of rigor is low and the length of training is also less than a week, and the length of stay in the other country would be 1 month or less. Then we give information giving approach, briefing about the area, briefing about the culture, films, books, videos, things like that. If the length of stay is 2 to 12 months and the level of rigor is moderate, then the length of training would be 1 to 4 weeks, and we will have an effective approach. Effective approach in the sense, culture assimilator training, role playing, case studies, stress reduction training. And if the length of stay would be 1 to 3 years and the level of rigor is high, then the length of training would be 1 to 2 months or even more than that. And the approach would be immersion approach, assessment centers, field experiments, simulations, sensitivity training, and extensive language training. Family adjustment support and relocation services, which play a very important role, may include housing issues, household goods movement, destination services, settling in assistance. The company may provide yearly home visits, elder care assistance, visas and the work permits, the relocation allowance, various compensation and benefits, education assistance for the families, health and medical insurance. Now, family adjustment support and relocation services may also include assistance, hardship allowances, automobile allowances, factual knowledge about the other country and the travelling abroad, adjustment and adaptation to the foreign country host country's value and the belief systems, and even the taxation policy. Virtual teams. Employees in various locations around the world who coordinate their work and decisions through teleconferencing, email, and so on. Virtual teams helps the organization in cost effectiveness. The barriers to distance in the culture is covered by the working of virtual teams. Now, the success or the failure of the expatriate depends on both the organization and the individual, as both have a bearing on the career prospects in the organization. Adler in 2001 and Dowling in 1999 said that the success of expats is due to the family support. When issues like spouse's career are involved, international HR has ensured that an expatriate is given his full due when the promotions are taking place in the organization. Today, the expatriate is no longer felt like an outsider, as he is also a task force to reckon with. A model for virtual team success. If we want that virtual team should work in a successful position, then there are 3 P's we need to take care of: people, purpose, and process. People includes the relationship, mutual understanding, leveraging contributions. And purpose should be aligned with the enterprise objectives. It should be clear. There should be shared goals. And if we talk about the process, communication, governance, team ground rules and decision making. Let's now summarize the module. Now, retaining international workforce is important for the organization as the cost involved in staffing, compensation and training and development is very high. The repatriates must know their position in the corporate ladder after a foreign posting. Now, the cultural shock may have a toll on the employees and a cultural training is a must for all the organizations which require to send its personnel to other countries. Cultural training and foreign compensation is an important aspect of human resources. Cultural training is required for the whole family. At times, as the stress of the spouse in the foreign country can cause a stress to the employee too. Compensation of the international staff should be taken into consideration, like education of the kids of expatriates, the taxes levied by the government, and the compensate losses for the job of the spouse. When an expatriate leaves the organization in the middle of the job, his loss is not mendable. He makes a dent in the job, which is tough for the organization to rectify. Hence, training, compensation are the two important factors which are responsible for the stay. Being lonesome is worrisome. Hence, IHRM, International Human Resource Management, takes into consideration the concept of family. Families are the gateway to home sickness. Thank you.